Hello and welcome to the Useless Baker. Today we are making shortcrust pastry. It's one of those pastries that you can use for so many things and it is so easy to make. We're not cooking it at the moment, we are just going to make it and store it in the fridge. And for shortcrust pastry you can use it for fruit pies, quiches, tarts. It's really quite versatile. So to start with, we measure out 250 grams of plain flour into a bowl. I don't usually bother sieving it because, well, I can't really be bothered. I'm not selling any of this, I'm just feeding the family, and frankly they don't care if there's a lump in the flour. Adding to that 125 grams of cold butter, should be just out of the fridge. And then once you've measured that out, you need to cube it as best you can. The cubes do not need to be perfectly the same. You really just need to make them so that they're sort of small and squarey shape is fine. As you can see here, I'm using a weird shaped bit of butter, and frankly, I'm assuming my husband cut that off of a lump and then put it back at waste not, want not. So I'm there merrily cubing that. It is best to use cold butter. We don't want it to sort of dissolve the flour. We don't want the flour to mix in it like you would a cake. We want it so that the flour and butter, even when they're combined, are actually still separate, and it allows for a flakier pastry. So we're adding the butter to the flour now. This is when I tend to add a little bit of salt. Up to you. I don't really notice much of a difference if I add salt, but always recipes always say to, so. And my husband swears that he can. Therefore, the salt is added. So now it's time for the messy bit. We scrunch. If any of you have got curly hair, you're probably fairly used to this technique. But what we want to do is try and combine the butter and the flour by sort of smearing the butter into the flour, if you will. You want to try and get breadcrumbs. That is the sort of consistency that you want. Once you've managed that, we're now going to add cold water. Don't worry if it takes a little while for it all to come together. It can take a good 5 or 10 minutes before you get breadcrumbs and before you get sort of like a dough with your cold water. Don't add too much cold water. It will turn into a batter, and then, you've ruined your pastry. You'll have to keep adding flour to absorb the water. So at this point, I'm merrily just trying to make it so that it's a dough, maybe adding a little bit more water just to make sure the little scraggly bits are all mixed in with the pastry, but not, as I said, not too much water. Once we're done with that, we're going to put it into a bag and store it in the fridge. It's always best to give it about 2 hours in the fridge. 24 hours is absolutely fine, so sometimes I make this the night before I actually use it. And then once it's been in the fridge for 2 hours, it's, you'll have to make it to room temperature before you actually roll it out and use it. However, at this point today, I'm just putting it in the bag and then putting it in the fridge. Useless Baker 1.